Hello, darlings. Happy Monday evening. Are you ready for a story? I certainly am, but I'm also ready for presents. Because you got here early, I'm going to show you something. It's a box of hats. It was given to me by a friend. It didn't come in the mailbag. That would be a lie. But there were 4 of these boxes filled with hats. Talk more about that later. It's a bit dusty. I'm going to get into bed. Pour myself a cup of tea, as usual. Today, it's ice wine tea, which apparently is a thing. They steep tea bags on vines. It's very unclear, but it's kind of a gimmick. I'm into it. All right. Every fucking week. Okay. I'm going to succeed at this. I am getting all the way in. And almost. Pray for this cup of tea that it doesn't fall over. Boop, boop, boop. Let's pretend that went really smoothly. Hello, darlings. I'm gonna regale you this evening with more Hitchhiker's Guide, which is very exciting. All right, I'm gonna pull up the comments so I can actually see you. Hello, Wandering Artificer. Hello, everyone else who's a little too scared to speak in the comments. I just wish you would come closer. Come closer. Oh, that's so much better. I'm so happy for that. Now, I'm sensing an eclipse coming on. Oh, it passed so smoothly. I would like to take this moment to thank my operator, Onsa, who usually has shows on Wednesdays teaching all about tarot, but not this week. So, darlings, have you been enjoying the Nat 21 programming? Have you been tuning in week after week? Hello, Sally. And first and foremost, before we get into the meat of the evening, can you hear me all right? Am I too loud? Am I too quiet? Or does it sound like I'm in an echoey room, like a cathedral of books, or a cathedral of hats? I'm very excited to talk to you about my hats. I'd like to point out again one of my very favorite teacups. It comes with a matched set. Technically, it's branded for the Baileys, but I like to think of it as drinking out of the skull of an enemy. The porcelain skull, perfect for your cup of brown joy. I'm ethereal. Ooh, I like ethereal. I'm going to move this, otherwise you're getting my armpit, a lot of my armpit getting in on the action. All right, darlings. Like I said, how was your week? How have you been? It's been delightful for me. It's full of gifts of hats and fine tea and visits from old friends and being fully vaccinated and patronage from beautiful, wonderful people. And that is a wonderful transition to say that this episode of the Glamour Hobo Field Notes with me, your storyteller, Carmel, is brought to you by Turtle Creek Coffee, because life's too short to drink bad coffee. If we could throw up that image of Turtle Creek Coffee, I would greatly appreciate it, operator. So thank you, Anne, and thank you, Mick. There it is. Tell him Shell sent me. They are wonderful. They are absolutely wonderful people and a wonderful company. And they do all sorts of coffee that's like bourbon infused or things like that, or like single fair trade origin. They are wonderful. Highly, highly, highly recommend. All right, dear ones. I'm going to show you a couple of the hats that I got this week. we're having a moment, and then I'll put on my reading glasses and we'll get to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, shall we? All right, I know that modern people are a little afraid of hats. I know this to be true because every time I wear one, everyone around me who sees me goes, oh, I don't have the head for hats. I can't do it. I just don't know where to wear them. And the answer, darlings, as always, is you wear it wherever you want. Make it a day. Everyone has a head for hats because hats are made for heads. Look at this chintzy brim, like jazz bass player situation. Like, my head is really big, like really big. So it's a little bit of a stretch to give to me. These were given to me by my friend Chip, who is a lovely man and a drummer and a mandolin player that I used to work with when I was a belly dancer. I think I'm going to wear it like this. It's little Mary Poppins, if you ask me. All right, next hat. This I think is my favorite of the batch. It's kind of a Homburg situation. I'm going to put it on this side actually because of how my hair is. Like, I know you can wear it up like that, but it really looks better like that. Look at that. Like, if I'm a lady train robber, or should I say a train robber, I could totally get away with this hat. Right? It's blue, it's beaver felt. Love it, love it, love it. It's got this cool little pin on it, which you can't really see, but zoom in if you choose to. Oh, this one makes me feel like the Queen of England because it's this kind of like curled up cake. Check that out. Wah, wah. Do the queen wave. Condolences on the passing of your husband, mom. Oh, these are really beautiful as well. So I've got like, check this out. I don't know where it begins or ends. It's by Michael Andrew, California styling. And you wear it on the back of your head like that. It clutches your skull with its fingers, which is wonderful. And similarly is this beautiful brown situation with those beaded details. So front, back, front, back, front, front, front. And it kind of, if you had longer hair, it would like sit back on it. But because I wear my hair like I do, I can kind of do a little bit of that. What do you think? All right, gorge, gorge, gorge. Two more. I love this little mustard friend, this little mustard pillbox. Big fan, big fan. And you can wear it backwards like that. I kind of feel like a stewardess when I'm wearing it, but I'm not mad about it. And this little pillbox, this little like Sunday pillbox with a little bit of a Eliza Doolittle vibe. Am I wrong? I'm not wrong. Very easy. Oh, it looks really good. Maybe I'll wear it for the rest of the show. And last but not least, this 1970s crunchy poly raffia situation, which is very like Sad Flower Lady or Bridesmaid in a 1976 wedding. Like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know how to. I love this shape, but it's just not doing it for me. Maybe if we did it like this, we could do like a new look situation, like a very editorial photo shoot where my eyes don't show and it's just the lips. Very Audrey Hepburn. That is my hats. I'm so grateful. And it came in this wonderful box, a Stetson box. And I love this detail. You cannot see it on this camera, but here on the side is a labeling of what is in this box. Handwritten. First it said Black Velvet Band, and that was crossed out. and then blue velvet, and that's crossed out, and then it says winter white, and that's crossed out. And this is the same thing I do with my hat boxes because they contain multitudes. I label what's inside of them so I can remember, because sadly for me, a lot of times with my belongings, out of sight is certainly out of mind. I'm going to attempt to wear this one for the duration of the show, actually. Oh no, I'm going to wear a different hat. I'm going to wear my sleeping cap, my nightcap. So it's just that piece of ephemera of it being a collection of someone's real clothes that they wore often enough to value, but not often enough to have out constantly, like grab it before they leave the house. So this, this hat, Stetson brand, would have cost a lot of money. It's special. All right. All right, darlings. Put on your nightcaps. Sally, it takes you back to your youth. Did you have a youth full of hats? That makes me happy. All right. I will master this microphone situation someday. I would also like to remind you before we get reading that I have a podcast called the Glamour Hobo Field Notes. It's everywhere you stream. Thank you for reminding me, operator. And there are 2 seasons out currently, and I am currently in production for the 3rd, which is very exciting. They are tiny podcasts of enormous delight. They run about 6 minutes, 7 minutes apiece, and they all speak to some kind of theme. So please go and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. That's hugely helpful to me. All right, let's get reading. I think I'm ready. I'm ready. Are you ready? I'm going to put on my reading glasses. Got these in DC a few years back at a market, and the seller was called Eyewear by Rocky, Raquui, I believe. And she's in DC, and you can find her on Instagram. That is delightful. All right. When last we were with our adventurers, Jesus Christ, this is, how do you people wear these all the time? This is blocking a lot of my vision. When last we met our heroes, I dropped a little gift I got in my mailbag from Todd Gardner, a handmade bookmark, and you can send me things too to my mailbag if the operator would throw up that address. You can send me gifts, you can send me nightwear, you can send me science fiction to read on the show, things you've written, /fiction. I'm not a judge. Classic sci-fi books from the thrift store. Anything really. When last we saw our heroes, they had just been nearly killed by some heat-seeking torpedoes, and then the improbability drive of the Heart of Gold was activated. All right. Chapter 18. I'm going to have to sneeze because the Stetson box was very, very dusty. And the next thing that happened after that was that the Heart of Gold continued on its way perfectly normally with a rather fetchingly redesigned interior. It was somewhat larger and done out in delicate pastel shades of green and blue. I swear to God, I did not know it was going to say that. I did not read ahead. So this whole green-blue situation I'm doing today is an improbable synchronicity. Ha! In the center, a spiral staircase, leading nowhere in particular, stood a spray of ferns and yellow flowers, and next to it a stone sundial pedestal housed the main computer terminal. Cunningly deployed lighting and mirrors created the illusion of standing in a conservatory, overlooking a wide stretch of exquisitely manicured garden. Around the periphery of the conservatory stood marble-topped tables on intricately beautiful wrought iron legs. As you gazed into the polished surface of the marble, the vague forms of instruments became visible, and as you touched them, the instruments materialized instantly under your hands. Looked at from the correct angles, the mirrors appeared to reflect all the required data readouts, though it was far from clear where they were reflected from. It was, in fact, sensationally beautiful. That is what a spaceship designed by me would look like. Relaxing in a wickerwork sun chair, Zaphod Beeblebrock said, "What the hell happened?" "Well, I was just saying," said Arthur, lounging by a small fish pool. "There's this improbability drive switch over here." He waved at where it had been. There was a potted plant there now. "But where are we?" said Ford, who was sitting on a spiral staircase, a nicely chilled pan-galactic gargle blaster in his hand. "Exactly where we were, I think," said Trillian, as all about them the mirrors suddenly showed them an image of the blighted landscape of Magrathea, which still scooted along beneath them. Zaphod leapt out of his seat. "Then what else happened to the missiles?" A new and astounding image appeared in the mirrors. "They would appear," said Ford doubtfully, "to have turned into a bowl of petunias and a very surprised-looking whale." I'm so excited for this part. "At the improbability factor," cut in Eddie, who hadn't changed a bit, "of 8,767,128 to 1 against." Zaphod stared at Arthur. "Did you think of that, Earthman?" he demanded. "Well, all I did was..." "That was very good thinking, you know. Turn on the improbability drive for a second without first activating the proofing screens. Hey, kid, you just saved our lives, you know that?" "Oh, well, it was nothing really." "Was it?" said Zaphod. "Oh, well, forget it then. Okay, computer, take us into land." But I said forget it. Another thing that got forgotten was the fact that, against all probability, a sperm whale had suddenly been called into existence several miles above the surface of an alien planet. And since this is not a naturally tenable position for a whale, this poor innocent creature had very little time to come to terms with its identity as a whale before it then had to come to terms with not being a whale anymore. This is a complete record of its thought from the moment it began its life till the moment it ended. "Ah! What's happening?" it thought. Excuse me. Who am I? Hello? Why am I here? What's my purpose in life? What do I mean by who am I? Calm down. Get a grip now. Ooh, this is an interesting sensation. What is it? It's sort of a yawning, tingling sensation in well, I suppose I'd better start finding names for things if I want to make any headway in what, for the sake of what I shall call an argument, I shall call the world. So let's call it my stomach. Good. Ooh, it's getting quite strong. And hey, what about this whistling, roaring sound going past what I'm suddenly going to call my head? Perhaps I can call that wind. Is that a good name? It'll do. Perhaps I can find a better name for it later when I've found out what it's for. It must be something very important because there certainly seems to be a hell of a lot of it. Hey, what's this thing? This Let's call it a tail. Yeah, tail. Hey, I can really thrash it around pretty good, can I? Wow. Wow, that feels great. Doesn't seem to achieve very much, but I'll probably find out what it's for later on. Now, have I built up any coherent picture of things yet? No. Never mind. Hey, this is really exciting. So much to find out about. So much to look forward to. I'm quite dizzy with anticipation. Or is that the wind? There really is a lot of it now, isn't there? Wow! Hey! What's that thing suddenly coming toward me very fast? Very, very fast. So big and flat and round. It needs a big, wide sounding name like ow. Ound, round, ground. That's it. That's it. That's a good name. Ground. I wonder if it'll be friends with me. And the rest, after a sudden wet thud, was silence. Curiously enough, the only thing that went through the mind of the bowl of petunias as it fell was, oh no, not again. Many people have speculated that if we knew exactly why the bowl of petunias had thought that, we would know a lot more about the nature of the universe than we do now. I would like to point out at this moment, I wrote a book report on those 6 sentences when I was a sophomore in high school. And it's one of the things that I remember the strongest about this book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which we are slowly but surely clipping through week by week. And it really is an existential passage. It's a page and a half. It's not even a page. It's a page and change. And it is hugely philosophical in it of like, not only do we not have enough time to figure out the world, we don't have enough time to figure out ourselves and the things around you. If you don't know to fear them, you just want to befriend them or eat them. And that the whale in this situation wanted a friend, and the ground, the big round ground that was rushing for him, wasn't coming for a hug. And they were just being their own truest natures inside of the worst circumstances. And if that isn't a metaphor for a life, and especially a metaphor for being a creature in COVID, I don't know what is. Moving on. Chapter 19. Are we taking this robot with us? Said Ford, looking with distaste at Marvin, who was standing in an awkward, hunched posture in the corner under a small palm tree. Zaphod glanced away from the mirror screens, which presented a panoramic view of the blighted landscape on which the Heart of Gold had now landed. Oh, the paranoid android? He said. Yeah, we'll take him. I have a real question, if anybody knows the answer. Is paranoid android a reference to the Radiohead album, or is the Radiohead album Paranoid Android a reference to this book? Or is it a reference to something else? Probably a Philip K. Dick thing. I'm not quite sure, because it is capital P, capital A, Paranoid Android in this book. Please tell me. I have questions. All right. But what are you supposed to do with a manically depressed robot? You think you've got problems, as if he was addressing a newly occupied coffin. What are you supposed to do if you are a manically depressed robot? No, don't bother to answer that. I'm 50,000 times more intelligent than you, and even I don't know the answer. It gives me a headache just trying to think down to your level. Trillian burst in through the door from her cabin. My white mice have escaped, she said, An expression of deep worry and concern failed to cross either of Zaphod's faces. "Nuts to your white mice!" Trillian glared an upset glare at him and disappeared again. It is possible that her remark would have commanded greater attention had it been generally realized that human beings were only the third most intelligent life form present on the planet Earth, instead of, as generally thought by most independent observers, the second. "Good afternoon, boys." The voice was oddly familiar, but oddly different. It had a matriarchal twang. It announced itself to the crew as they arrived at the airlock hatchway that would let them out on the planet's surface. They looked at each other in puzzlement. "It's the computer," explained Zaphod. "I discovered it had an emergency backup personality that I thought might work out better." "Now, this is going to be your first time out on a strange new planet," continued Eddie's new voice. "So I want you all wrapped up snug and warm and no playing with any naughty bug-eyed monsters." Zaphod tapped impatiently on the hatch. "I'm sorry," he said. "I think we might be better off with the slide rule." "Right," snapped the computer. "What said that?" "Will you open the exit hatch, please, computer?" said Zaphod, trying not to get angry. "Not until whoever said owns up," urged the computer, stamping out a few synapses closed. "Oh, God," muttered Ford, slumped against the bulkhead. He started to count to 10. He was desperately worried that one day sentient life forms would forget how to do this. Only by counting could humans demonstrate their independence of computers. "Come on," said Eddie sternly. "Computer," began Zaphod. "I'm waiting," interrupted Eddie. I can wait all day if necessary." "Computer," said Zaphod again, who had been trying to think of some subtle piece of reasoning that put the computer down with, and had decided not to bother competing with it on top of its own ground. "If you don't open that exit hatch this minute, I shall zap straight off to your major data banks and reprogram you with a very large axe. Got that?" Eddie, shocked, paused and considered this. Ford carried on counting quietly. "This is about the most aggressive thing you could do to a computer. The equivalent of going up to a human being and saying, 'Blood, blood, 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 blood.'" Ooh, and the internet says the Radiohead song Paranoid Android came from this book. Look at that. Discovering all sorts of things. Don't forget to stay hydrated, dear ones. All right. Finally, Eddie said quietly, "I can see this relationship is something we're all going to have to work at." And the hatchway opened. Ah. An icy wind ripped into them. They hugged themselves warmly and stepped down the ramp onto the barren dust of Magrathea. "It'll all end in tears, I know it," shouted Eddie after them, and closed the hatchway again. A few minutes later, he opened and closed the hatchway again in response to a command that caught him entirely by surprise. If you're just joining us, my name is Carmel, and I am reading through the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy week by week. We are just arriving on Magrathea. 5 figures wandered slowly over the blighted land. Bits of it were dullish gray, bits of it dullish brown, the rest of it rather less interesting to look at. It was like a dried-out marsh, now barren of all vegetation, and covered with a layer of dust about an inch thick. It was very cold. Zaphod was clearly rather depressed about it. He stalked off by himself and was soon lost to sight behind a slight rise in the ground. The wind stung Arthur's eyes and ears, and the stale, thin air clasped his throat. However, the thing that was stung most was in his mind. "It's fantastic," he said, and his own voice rattled his ears. Sound carried badly in this thin atmosphere. Desolate hole, if you ask me, said Ford. I could have more fun in cat litter. He felt a mounting irritation. Of all the planets in all the star systems of all the galaxy, many wild and exotic, seething with life, didn't he just have to turn up on a dump like this after 15 years of being a castaway? Not even a hot dog stand in evidence. He stooped down and picked up a cold clot of earth, but there was nothing underneath it worth crossing thousands of light years to look at. No, insisted Arthur. Don't you understand? This is the first time I've actually stood on the surface of another planet. A whole alien world. Pity it's such a dump, though. Trillian hugged herself and shivered and frowned. She could have sworn she saw a slight and unexpected movement out of the corner of her eye, but when she glanced in that direction, all she could see was the ship, still and silent, 100 yards or so behind them. She was relieved when a second or so later they caught sight of Zaphod standing on top of a ridge of ground and waving to them to come and join him. He seemed to be excited, but they couldn't clearly hear what he was saying because the thinnish atmosphere and the wind. As they approached the ridge of higher ground, they became aware that it seemed to be circular, a crater about 150 yards wide. Round the outside of the crater, the sloping ground was spattered with black and red lumps. They stopped and looked at a piece. It was wet. It was rubbery. With horror, they suddenly realized that it was fresh whale meat. Yeah, call back to that. Thanks a lot, Douglas Adams. You sick jerk. At the top of the crater's lip, they met Zaphod. Look, he said, pointing into the center. At the center lay the exploded carcass of a lonely sperm whale that hadn't lived long enough to be disappointed with its lot. The silence was only disturbed by the slight involuntary spasms of Trillian's throat. I suppose there's no point in trying to bury it, murmured Arthur, and then wished he hadn't. Come, said Zaphod, and started back down to the crater. What, down there? With severe distaste. Yeah, said Zaphod. Come on, I've got to show you something. We can see it. Not that. Something else. Come on. They all hesitated. Come on, insisted Zaphod. I found a way in. In? Arthur said with horror. Into the interior of their planet. An underground passage. The force of the whale's impact cracked it open. And that's where we have to go. Where no man has trod these 5 million years, into the very depths of time itself. Marvin started his ironical humming again. Zaphod hit him to shut him up. With little shudders of disgust, they all followed Zaphod down the incline into the crater, trying very hard to avoid looking at its unfortunate creature. Life, said Marvin dolefully. Loathe it or ignore it. You can't like it. The ground had caved in where the whale had hit it, revealing a network of galleries and passages, now largely obstructed by collapsed rubble and entrails. Zaphod had made a start, clearing a way into one of them, but Marvin was able to do it faster. Dank air wafted out of its dark recesses, and as Zaphod shone a flashlight into it, little was visible in the dusty gloom. According to the legends, he said, the Magrathians lived most of their lives underground. Why is that? Did the surface become too polluted or overpopulated? No, I don't think so. I think they just didn't like it very much. Are you sure you know what you're doing? Said Trillian, peering nervously into the darkness. We've been attacked once already, you know. Look, kid, I promise you, the live population of this planet is nil plus the 4 of us. So come on, let's get in there. Hey, Earthman. Arthur. Yeah, could you just sort of keep this robot with you and guard this end of the passageway? Okay. Guard, said Arthur. What from? You just said no one's here. Yeah, well, just for safety. Whose? Yours or mine? Good lad. Okay, here we go. Zaphod scrambled down into the passage, followed by Trillian and Ford. Well, I hope you all have a really miserable time, complained Arthur. Don't worry, Marvin assured him. They will. In a few seconds, they had disappeared from view. Arthur stamped around in a huff, and then decided that a whale's graveyard is not, on the whole, a good place to stamp around in. Marvin eyed him balefully for a moment, and then turned himself off. Zaphod marched quickly down the passageway, nervous as hell, but trying to hide it and striding purposefully. He flung the beam around. The walls were covered in dark tiles and were cold to the touch, the air thick with decay. There, what did I tell you? He said. An inhabited planet, Magrathea. And he strode on through the dirt and debris that littered the tile floors. Trillian was reminded unavoidably of the London Underground, though it was less thoroughly squalid. At intervals along the walls, the tiles gave way to large mosaics, simple angular patterns, and bright colors. Trillian stopped and studied one of them, but could not interpret any sense in them. She called to Zaphod. Hey, you have any idea what these strange symbols are? I think they're just strange symbols of some kind, said Zaphod, hardly glancing back. Trillian shrugged and hurried after him. From time to time, a doorway led either to the left or right into smallish chambers which Ford discovered to be full of derelict computer equipment. He dragged Zaphod into one to have a look. Trillian followed. Look, said Ford. You reckon this is Magrathea? Yeah, we heard the voice, right? Okay, so I've brought the fact that it's Magrathea. I've bought the fact that it's Magrathea for the moment. What you have so far said nothing about is how in the galaxy you found it. You didn't just look up in the Star Atlas. Research, government archives, detective work, few lucky guesses. Easy. And then you stole the heart of gold to come and look for it with, I stole it to look for a lot of things. A lot of things, said Ford in surprise. Like what? I don't know. What? I don't know what I'm looking for. What not? Because I think I might be, because if I knew I wouldn't be able to look for them. Are you crazy? It's a possibility I haven't ruled out yet. I only know as much about myself as my mind can work out under its current conditions, and its current conditions are not good. For a long time, nobody said anything as Ford gazed at Zaphod with a mind suddenly full of worry. Listen, old friend, if you want to... No, wait, I'll tell you something. I freewheel a lot. I get an idea to do something, and hey, why not? I do it. I reckon I'll become president of the galaxy, and it just happens. It's easy. I decide to steal the ship. I decide to look for Magrathea, and it all just happens. Yeah, I work out how it can best be done, right? But it always just works out. It's like having a galactic credit card which keeps on working, though you never send it off to the checks. And then whenever I stop and think, why did I want to do something? How did I work out how to do it? I get a very strong desire just to stop thinking about it, like I have right now. It's a big effort to talk about it. Zaphod paused for a while. For a while, there was silence. Then he frowned and said, Last night I was worrying about this again, about the fact that part of my mind just didn't seem to work properly. Then it occurred to me that the way it seemed was that someone else was using my mind to give good ideas without telling me about it. I put the two ideas together, and suddenly that maybe, that somebody had locked off part of my mind for that purpose, which was why I couldn't use it. I wondered if there was a way I could check. I went to the ship's medical bay and plugged myself into the encephalographic screen. I went through every major screen and test on both of my heads, all the tests I had to go through under government medical officers before my nomination for presidency could be properly ratified. They showed up nothing unexpected at least. They showed that I was clever, imaginative, irresponsible, untrustworthy, extrovert, nothing you couldn't have guessed, and no other anomalies. So I started inventing further tests, completely at random, nothing. Then I tried superimposing the results from one head on top of the results from the other head, still nothing. Finally, I got silly because I'd given up as nothing more than an attack of paranoia. And the last thing I did before I packed it in was to take the superimposed picture and look at it through a green filter. You remember I was always superstitious about the color green when I was a kid. I always wanted to be a pilot on one of them trading scouts. Ford nodded. And there it was, said Zaphod, clear as day, a whole section in the middle of both brains that related only to each other and not to anything else around them. Some bastard had cauterized all the synapses and electronically traumatized those 2 lumps of cerebellum. Ford stared at him, aghast. Trillian turned white. Somebody did that to you? Yeah. But have you any idea who or why? Why? I can only guess. But I do know who the bastard was. You know? How do you know? Because they left their initials burned into the cauterized synapses. They left them there for me to see. Ford stared at him in horror and felt his skin begin to crawl. Initials? Burned into your brain? Yeah. Well, what were they, for God's sake? Zaphod looked at him in silence again for a moment. Then he looked away. Z. B. At that moment, a steel shutter slammed down behind them, and gas started to pour into the chamber. I'll tell you about it later. Zaphod and all 3 passed out. How are you enjoying yourselves, darling? Things are getting dramatic. There's poison gas, and Zaphod's getting emotional. I don't even know what to do with that. Chapter 21. On Nat 21 Adventures. On the surface of Magrathea, Arthur wandered about moodily. Ford had thoughtfully left him a copy of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy to while away the time with. He pushed a few buttons at random. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a very unevenly edited book and contains many passages that simply seemed to its editors like a good idea at the time. One of these, the one Arthur now came across, supposedly relates the experiences of one Vit Vujajig, a quiet young student at the University of Meximegalon, who pursued a brilliant academic career studying ancient philology, transformational ethics, and the wave harmonic theory of historical perception, and then, after a night of drinking pan-galactic gargle blasters with Zaphod Beeblebrox, became increasingly obsessed with the problem of what had happened to all the ballpoints he'd bought over the last few years. Hi, Johnny O Twitch. There followed a long period of painstaking research during which he visited all the major centers of ballpoint lost throughout the galaxy, and eventually came up with a quaint little theory which quite caught the public imagination at the time. Somewhere in the cosmos, he said, along with all the planets inhabited by humanoids, reptiloids, fishoids, walking trioids, and super-intelligent shades of the color blue, there was also a planet entirely given over to ballpoint life forms. And it was this planet that unattended ballpoints would make their way, slipping away quietly through wormholes in space to a world where they knew they could enjoy a uniquely ballpointed lifestyle, responding to highly ballpoint-oriented stimuli and generally leading the ballpoint equivalent of good life. I have to say, I think about this with bobby pins and hair clips, claw clips. They just wander away to their home planet. They just find the others just like them. They RUNNOFT. As the theories go, this was all very fine and pleasant until Vit Vorjajig suddenly claimed to have found this planet and to have worked there for a while, driving a limousine for a family of cheap green retractables, whereupon he was taken away, locked up, wrote a book, and was finally sent into tax exile, which is the usual fate reserved for those who are determined to make fools of themselves in public. Bobby pins. Where are they? I don't know. Small objects. I don't know. I actually wrote that as a lyric into my song about hats. Chapeau, chapeau, how I love you. Yeah, the middle bit goes, do you love my red hair, though it's fake and it's lying about being curly and easily trying to eat all the pins that I feed it each day. Oh yeah, it's a whole thing. So sometimes I just think that my hair is a doorway into another dimension for bobby pins to find their home planet. All right. When one day an expedition was sent to the spatial coordinates that Vorjajig had claimed for this planet, they discovered only a small asteroid inhabited by a solitary old man who claimed repeatedly that nothing was true, though he was later discovered to be lying. There did, however, remain the question of both the mysterious 60,000 Altarian dollars paid yearly to his Brantisvogen bank account, and, of course, Zevod Bibelbrux's highly profitable second-hand ballpoint business. Arthur read this and put the book down. The robot still sat there, completely inert. Arthur got up and walked to the top of the crater. He walked around the crater. He watched two suns set magnificently over Magrathea. He went back down into the crater. He woke the robot up, because even a manically depressed robot is better to talk to than no one at all. Night's falling, he said. Look, robot, the stars are coming out. From the heart of a dark nebula, it is possible to see very few stars, and only very faintly, but they were there to be seen. The robot obediently looked at him, then looked back. I know. Wretched, isn't it? But that sunset! I've never seen anything like it in my wildest dreams. 2 suns. It was like mountains of fire boiling into space. I've seen it. It's rubbish. We only ever had the one sun at home. I came from a planet called Earth, you know. I know, said Marvin. You keep going on about it. It sounds awful. Oh, no, it was a beautiful place. Did it have oceans? Oh, yes, Arthur said with a sigh. Great, wide, rolling blue oceans. Can't bear oceans, said Marvin. Tell me, inquired Arthur, do you get on well with other robots? Hate them. Where are you going? I think I'll just take another walk. Arthur couldn't bear it anymore. He had to get up again. Don't blame you, said Marvin, and counted 597 billion sheep before falling asleep again, a second later. Arthur slapped his arms about himself to try and get his circulation a little bit more enthusiastic about its job. He trudged back up the wall of the crater. Because the atmosphere was so thin and because there was no moon, nightfall was very rapid, and it was by now very dark. Because of this, Arthur practically walked into the old man before he noticed him. Chapter 22! Dun dun dun! New character! What voice will I choose for him? What do you think he should sound like? Drop your suggestions in the comment section, and I will try to integrate it. to the best of my ability. He was standing with his back to Arthur and watching the very last glimmers of light sink into blackness behind the horizon. He was tallish, elderly, and dressed in a single long grey robe. This is a very hermit-like person. When he turned, his face was thin and distinguished, careworn but not unkind, the sort of face you would happily bank with. But he didn't turn yet, not even to react to Arthur's yelp of surprise. Eventually, the last rays of the sun vanished completely, and he turned. His face was still illuminated from somewhere, and when Arthur looked for the source of light, he saw that a few yards away stood a small craft of some kind. A hovercraft, Arthur guessed. It shed a dim pool of light around it. The man looked at Arthur. Sadly, it seemed. All right, has anyone got suggestions about Slarty Bartfast's accent? Squeaky? Squeaky. All right. All right. I'll do my best. Anything for the people. You chose a cold night to visit our planet. Squeaky enough. Less helium. Who are you? Stammered Arthur. The man looked away. Again, a look of sadness seemed to cross his face. My name is not important, he said. He seemed to have something on his mind. Conversation was clearly something he felt he didn't have to rush for. Arthur felt awkward. You startled me, he said lamely. The man looked around him again and slightly raised his eyebrows. I said you startled me? Do not be alarmed. I will not hurt you. Arthur frowned at him. But you shot at us. There were missiles. The man gazed into the pit of the crater. The slight glow from Marvin's eyes cast very faint red shadows on the huge carcass of the whale. The man chuckled slightly. An automatic system, he said, and gave a small sigh. Ancient computers ranged in the bowels of the planet tick away dark millennia, and the ages hang heavy on their dusty databanks. I think they take the occasional potshot to relieve the monotony. He looked gravely at Arthur and said, I'm a great fan of science, you know. Oh, really? Arthur was beginning to find the man's curious, kindly manner disconcerting. Oh, yes, said the old man, and simply stopped talking again. He had an odd feeling of being like a man in the act of adultery who is surprised when the woman's husband wanders into the room, changes his trousers, passes a few idle remarks about the weather, and leaves again. You seem ill at ease. No, well, actually, you see, we weren't really expecting to find anybody about. In fact, I sort of gathered that you were all dead or something. Dead, said the old man. Good gracious me. We have but slept. Slept. Yes, through the economic recession, you see, said the old man, apparently unconcerned about whether Arthur understood a word he was talking about or not. Arthur had to prompt him again. Economic recession? Well, you see, 5 million years ago, the galactic economy collapsed, and seeing that custom-built planets are something of a luxury commodity, he paused and looked at Arthur. You know we built planets, do you? He asked solemnly. Well, yes, I sort of gathered. Fascinating trade, said the old man, and a wistful look came over his eyes. Doing the coastlines was always my favorite. Used to have endless fun doing the little bits in fjords, you know. So anyways, he said, trying to find his thread again, the recession came and we decided it would have a lot of bother if we could it would save a lot of bother if we could just sleep through it. So we programmed the computers to revive us when it was all over. The man stifled a slight yawn and continued. The computers were index linked to the galactic stock market prices, you see, so that we'd all be revived when everybody else had rebuilt the economy enough to afford our rather expensive services. Arthur, a regular Guardian reader, was deeply shocked at this. That's a pretty unpleasant way to behave, isn't it? Is it? Asked the old man mildly. I'm sorry, I'm a bit out of touch. He pointed down into the crater. Is that robot yours? No, came a thin metallic voice from the crater. I'm mine, if you'd call it a robot, muttered Arthur. It was more a sort of an electronic sulking machine. Bring it, said the old man. Arthur was quite surprised to hear a note of decision suddenly present in the old man's voice. He called to Marvin, who crawled up the slope, making a big show of being lame, which he wasn't. On second thoughts, said the old man, leave it here. You must come with me. Great things are afoot. He turned toward his craft, which, though no apparent signal had been given, now drifted quietly towards them through the dark. Arthur looked down at Marvin, who now made an equally big show of turning around laboriously and trudging off down into the crater again, muttering sour nothings to himself. Come, said the old man. Come now, or you will be late. Late? For what? What is your name, human? Dent. Arthur Dent. Late, as in the late Dent Arthur Dent, said the old man sternly. It's a sort of threat, you see. Another wistful look came into his tired eyes. I've never been very good at them myself, but I'm told they can be very effective. Arthur blinked. What an extraordinary person, he muttered to himself. I beg your pardon, said the old man. Oh, nothing, I'm sorry, Arthur said in embarrassment. All right, where do we go? In my air car, said the old man, mentioning Arthur to get into the craft which had settled silently next to them. We are going into the bowels of the planet where even now our race is being revived from its 5 million-year slumber. Magrathea awakes. Arthur shivered involuntarily as he seated himself next to the old man. The strangeness of it, the silent bobbing movement of the craft as it soared into the night sky, quite unsettled him. He looked at the old man, his face illuminated by the dull glow of tiny lights on the instrument panel. Excuse me, he said. What is your name, by the way? My name? Said the old man, and the same distant sadness came into his face, and he paused. My name, he said, is Slotty Bartfast. Arthur practically choked. I beg your pardon, he spluttered. Slotty Bartfast, repeated the old man quietly. Slarty Bartfast? The old man looked away gravely. I said it wasn't important. The air car sailed through the night. Chapter 23, and then we will wrap, darlings. It is an important and popular fact that things are not always what they seem. For instance, on the planet Earth, man had always assumed that he was more intelligent than dolphins because he had achieved so much. the wheel, New York, wars, and so on. While all the dolphins had ever done was muck about in the water having a good time. But, conversely, the dolphins had always believed that they were far more intelligent than man, for precisely the same reasons. Curiously enough, the dolphins had long known of the impending destruction of the planet Earth and had made many attempts to alert mankind of the danger. But most of their communications were misinterpreted as amusing attempts to punch footballs or whistle for tidbits, so they eventually gave up and left the Earth by their own means shortly before the Vogons arrived. The last ever dolphin message was misinterpreted as a surprisingly sophisticated attempt to do a double backward somersault through a hoop whilst whistling the Star-Spangled Banner. But in fact, the message was... What was it, children? Tell me in the comments. So long, and thanks for all the fish. In fact, there was only one species on the planet more intelligent than dolphins. And they spent a lot of their time in behavioral research laboratories, running around inside wheels and conducting frighteningly elegant and subtle experiments on man. The fact that once again man completely misinterpreted this relationship was entirely according to these creatures' plans. And that is where we will leave it this evening, my darlings. I have two things to say to you before we say good night, which is, I, Carmel, your glamour hobo, your storyteller, your hat-wearing human, will take off these glasses, my reading glasses, and say to you, I'm looking to move. I am looking to relocate. I am looking for work, and I am looking for a place to live and nest in the Northeast Corridor of the United States. That means Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philly, perhaps points beyond. So if you are a person who has a bead on a place to live or a job that needs me, please send us an email. You can send me one to carmel@spectacleandmirth.com. If my operator could please type that into the chat and drop it, I would be very happy and thankful. That's carmel@spectacleandmirth, as in I make a spectacle of myself for your mirth.com. And I am going to continue to enjoy my power as the Metatron on tomorrow's Tuesday night adventure on Nat 21 Adventures. I've been loving it so far. I hope you are as well. And to remind you that if you're nourishing the service, you can drop me a tip. And if you're interested in a longer-term relationship about the podcast that I do, the writing that I do, the in-progress work, the behind the scenes, the monthly meetup, you should be a patron of mine. You can find all of that in all of the places. And Carmel Clavin. That's me. That's me. That's me. So thank you, Nat 21 Adventures, for hosting me. I am so pleased to be here. And darlings, send me a note. I would love to hear from you. And if you really want something lovely this month, I'll even extend it into May. If you become a patron, I'll send you one of the hats from the treasure trove I got. It won't be one of the ones I showed you because I'm keeping those. But I have so many more hats that were given to me. Men's hats, ladies' hats, all vintage, all shared with love. So if you become a patron supporter of mine during April or during May, I will send you a hat. And if you're already a supporter and you level up, I will still send you a hat because I like you and I like hats and I think that you should wear one. Darlings, it has been my pleasure and my privilege to be here with you, and I say to you, with all the love in my cold, cold heart, good night.